Oh yeah, Canto number 424. Still the eighth circle, sixth pouch, the hypocrites, hard passage to the seventh pouch, the thieves, bitten by a serpent, a thieving sinner who turns to ashes and is then restored. Vani Vucci, Vani Fucci. It's a first name and a last name. Fucci being Fucci, Vani being Vanni. His prediction of the defeat of the whites, Dante's party at Pistoia. In that part of the young year when the sun begins to warm its locks beneath Aquarius and nights grow shorter, equaling the days, when hoarfrost mimes the image of his white sister upon the ground, but not for long, because the pen he uses is not sharp. The farmer who is short of fodder rises and looks and sees the fields all white, at which he slaps his thigh, turns back into the house, and here and there complains like some poor wretch who doesn't know what can be done, and then goes out again and gathers up new hope, on seeing that the world has changed its face in so few hours, and he takes his staff and hurries out his flock of sheep to pasture. So did my master fill me with dismay when I saw how his brow was deeply troubled, yet then the plaster soothed the sores quickly. For soon as we were on the broken bridge, my guide turned back to me with that sweet manner I first had seen along the mountain's base, and he examined carefully the ruin. Then, having picked the way we would ascend, he opened up his arms and thrust me forward, and just as he who ponders as he labors was always ready for the step ahead, so, as he lifted me up toward the summit of one great crag, he seen another spur, saying, "That is the one you will grip next, but try it first to see if it's firm." That was no path for those with cloaks of lead, for he light, I with support could hardly make it up from spur to spur. And were it not that down from this enclosure the slope was shorter than the bank before, I cannot speak for him, but I should surely have been defeated. But since Malabolge runs right into the mouth of its last well, the placement of each valley means it must have one bank high and have the other short. And so we reached at length the jutting where the last stone of the ruined bridge breaks off. The breath within my lungs was so exhausted from climbing I could not go on. In fact, as soon as I had reached that stone, I sat. "Now you must cast aside your laziness," my master said, "for he who rests on down or under covers cannot come to fame, and he who spends his life without renown leaves such a vestige of himself on earth as smoke bequeaths to air or foam to water. Therefore get up, defeat your breathlessness with spirit that can win all battles if the body's heaviness does not deter it. A longer ladder still was to be climbed. It's not enough to have left them behind. If you have understood, now profit from it." Then I arose and showed myself far better equipped with breath than I had been before. "Go on, for I am strong and confident." We took our upward way upon the bridge with crags more jagged, narrow, difficult, and much more steep than we had crossed before. I spoke as we went on, not to seem weak. At this, a voice came from the ditch beyond, a voice that was not suited to form words. I know not what he said, although I was already at the summit of the bridge that crosses there, and yet he seemed to move. I bent downward, but my living eyes could not see to the bottom through that dark, at which I said, "O master, can we reach the other belt? Let us descend the wall, for as I hear and cannot understand, so I see down, but can distinguish nothing. The only answer that I give to you is doing it," he said. "A just request is to be met in silence by the act." We then climbed down the bridge just at the end, where it runs right into the eighth embankment, and now the moat, M-O-A-T, was plain enough to me, and there within I saw a dreadful swarm of serpents, so extravagant in form, remembering them still drains my blood from me. Let Libya boast no more about her sands, for if she breeds Chelydri, Chelydri, Jaculi, Jaculi, Centres, Cnchres, with Amphisbaena, Amphisbaena, and Parea, or Paree, Pareae, and she never showed, with all of Ethiopia, or all the land that borders the Red Sea, so many such malignant pestilences. Among this cruel and depressing swarm ran people who were naked, terrified, with no hope of a hole or a heliotrope. Their hands were tied behind by serpents. These had thrust their head and tail right through the loins, and then were knotted on the other side. Oh, so they're like snakes are being tying them up like rope. And there a serpent sprang with force at one who stood upon our shore, transfixing him just where the neck and shoulders form a knot. No O or I has ever been transcribed so quickly as that soul caught fire and burned, and as he fell, completely turned to ashes. And when he lay undone upon the ground, the dust of him collected by itself and instantly returned to what it was. Just so it is asserted by great sages that when it reaches its 500th year, the phoenix dies and then it is born again. Lifelong, it never feeds on grass or grain, only on drops of incense and amomum, A-M-O-M-U-M. Its final winding sheets are nard and myrrh. And just as he who falls and knows not how, by demon's force that drags him to the ground, or by some other hindrance that binds man, who, when he rises, stares about him, all bewildered by the heavy anguish he has suffered, sighing as he looks around, so did this sinner stare when he arose. Oh, how severe it is, the power of God, that, as his vengeance showers down such blows. My guide then asked that sinner who he was. To this he answered, not long since I ranged from Tuscany into the savage maw, M-A-W. Mule that I was, the bestial life pleased me, and not the human. I am Vani Fuci beast, and the den that suited me, Pistoia. And I, to Virgil, tell him not to slip away and ask what sin has thrust him here. I knew him as a man of blood and anger. The sinner heard and did not try to feign, but turned his mind and face intent toward me, and coloring with miserable shame. He said, I suffer more because you've caught me in this, the misery you see that I suffered when taken from the other life. I can't refuse to answer what you ask. I am set down so far because I robbed the sacristy of its fair ornaments, and someone else was falsely blamed for that. But lest this sight give you too much delight, if you can ever leave these lands of darkness, open your ears to my announcement. Here, Pistoia first will strip herself of blacks, then Florence will renew her men and manners. That's kind of, I think it's racist. If Pistoia is like a place, will first strip herself of blacks, then Florence will renew her men and manners. From Baldi Magra, Mars will draw a vapor which turbid clouds will try to wrap. The clash between them will be fierce, impetuous, a tempest fought upon Campo Piceno, until that vapor vigorous shall crack the mist, and every wight be struck by it. And I have told you this to make you grieve. All right, that was the end of Canto 24.